All right, so welcome back. It's been a couple of days. As you can see, I'm going to open up the log here. It's now Wednesday the 6th. If we open up today, we see that there's only one recurring task, and the rest of the week is pretty much empty, which is not actually the case. So let's fix that now. So tomorrow, gotta read some manga. Another thing I need to do tomorrow is I need to pack for my trip. I have a very, very important trip that I need to take on Friday morning. It's not actually important. I'm going to go to a concert, but it is very important for me. So it is going here and I need to pack for my trip. Otherwise, I'm going to be packing at the last moment. So that goes there. Now let's go back to the topics for just a moment. I want to talk a little bit about vibe coding. I've been doing a bit of that recently before starting this video series. So some of the things that I've been working on are related to other topics that I'm interested in, specifically language learning and productivity systems and ADHD. So vibe coding, if you are not familiar with the term, is where we're using AI, so things like ChatGPT and Claude and all the different AI models to help us write code, basically. Sometimes it works pretty well. Sometimes you create a big heap and pile of slop and then it doesn't work. But there are definitely ways to make it much more likely that you're actually making something usable. One of the first ones that I worked on was on a podcast translation slash it's like vocabulary learner thing. So the way that this would work is I would find podcasts in Japanese that I thought might be relevant to my interests and then put them into this system and use AI to transcribe the audio, turn the audio into text, use AI again to translate that transcription, and then use some sort of text-to-speech system to produce more or less natural sounding English and Japanese, and then combine them. It would either give me the audio in English first and then in Japanese, and then just, line by line, basically sentence by sentence of the podcast, or it would go the other way around. So Japanese first and then English. And the reason for that is because I wanted to train two different parts of my brain. I guess you could think of it that way. The first one where we're listening to the foreign language first and then our native language. The idea behind that is that you are trying to basically translate in your head. You're not actually supposed to try and translate it. You're supposed to try and get as much meaning from that sentence, and then immediately you're getting feedback on how close you are to that. So are you actually understanding it as the podcast is progressing? The other way around, where you're first hearing your language and then the language that you're studying, is useful for vocabulary training because you first understand what you're about to hear. And because it's just one sentence at a time, it's pretty short. And then you hear it in the language that you're studying. What's supposed to happen is you hear it in your language, and then based on how much vocabulary and grammar you know, you're already trying to translate it into the language that you're studying. And then again, you immediately get the feedback of how close you were. And that just happens over and over and over as the podcast progresses. So it's pretty useful. I got it working. It was just a simple Python program, and I was downloading files from the different, I don't know what you would even call them. It's almost like RSS feeds for podcasts. I guess that's what it is. I would download those files, put them in a folder, run my script, and then, the output would be a bunch of MP3 files of the podcast, but now I can use them to study. And that was pretty good. I just wanted to start with something that was relevant to me, was solving a problem I had, and I had some success with that. It was useful. I didn't continue using it because I ended up doing other things to study, but it was pretty good, and I would like to maybe polish it a little bit because at the end of the day, it was just a Python script, and it required a little bit of fiddling and moving around, updating the file names and things like that. It was pretty bad. It was straight up. It was just pretty bad. So I think the concept was proven. It works. It can be pretty useful. I'm going to try and rewrite it in a series. And this time we're going to give it a nice front end, even if it just runs locally. So it's, it looks more like a website where you just kind of drag and drop things and it does the thing and it spits out the files. At least that would be a much friendlier experience. And then we might even open source the code. So just, you could host it or do whatever you want with it, because I think that might be a pretty useful tool. Another project that I did after this one was I was kind of dissatisfied with the spaced repetition applications that are available. So if you're familiar with spaced repetition, it's just a way to optimize flashcards, is all it is. There's an algorithm that is supposed to help you review information right as you're about to forget it. And so the idea is that by reviewing it at the right time, you're much more likely to put it into your long-term memory and actually remember it. Problem is that even though Anki is pretty useful, I felt that it just becomes a hassle. It becomes its own thing. There were moments where I was spending up to an hour or more a day just reviewing the cards, like not even actually adding new cards to review. And so that was not a fun time. I was not enjoying that. And if I wasn't enjoying it, what was the point? I just was going to quit. So instead of torturing myself, I decided to just drop it and kind of pick up vocabulary as I come across it, instead of trying to brute force it into my memory, which is kind of the idea. And, far be it for me to tell you not to do that if you're able to do it. I just can't do it. I just can't keep up with that pace. But if you can, go ahead and try that. So for this project, what I did was I attempted to write my own spaced repetition application where instead of focusing on doing a lot of repetitions, the focus was on seeing the same vocabulary in multiple different contexts. So this is kind of getting into a little bit of a rabbit hole of why I don't like Anki, but I think it's worthwhile. And if you've used any of these spaced repetition systems, this might resonate with you. So let me maybe just take a moment to kind of explain the reasoning behind that. So one of the things that I've seen is that if you use any of these flashcard applications for studying for school or for hobbies or whatever, what can sometimes happen is instead of internalizing the information you're studying, you end up memorizing the card. So there would be times where I would see either the English sentence or the Japanese sentence, and I would almost immediately know what the answer was without even fully reading the whole thing, or if it was a character or whatever it was. And I thought that was pretty weird. But until I realized what was actually happening is I was memorizing something about the card. I was just memorizing the card. I wasn't actually internalizing the information. So then when I saw the vocabulary in context on a website, in a series, in a video or whatever, I was wondering why I was struggling so much to recall it. I had studied it. It was in my list of cards. I was doing well and I had seemingly memorized it. So what was going on? Well, actually what I had memorized was the card. But when the information was presented in the real world, as you are actually attempting to study for, that's where I was struggling. So I kind of stopped using Anki. I realized that just was not the right approach for me, and instead focused on doing a lot of input. So actually just doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of watching, and doing a lot of listening of native content. So that feels like a better approach for me. And so this project was an attempt to kind of replicate that artificially. Again, I wanted to use AI because it was a hot new thing. It's still a hot new thing. There's just so many things you can do with it. And so I figured if I could give this my vocabulary and then have it come up with a bunch of sentences tailored to my level and study that instead, I could probably do a lot less repetitions, see it in much more contexts that would help me internalize it, right? Because the whole point of vocabulary and grammar is not to memorize the vocabulary and grammar. It's to let your brain do its natural language learning processes and extract the grammar rules, right? So that the language just feels right when you're listening to it or you're speaking it. You don't have to think about it. But to get to that point, you just have to get a lot of input. And that's kind of the thing that I feel is going to help me the most. So this was the second project. It was my version of an SRS program. The focus, again, was just on limited vocabulary, but lots of exposure in different contexts. So I think that's good enough for now. These are just two of several vibe coding projects that I've started, and some of them I've completed. Others have just ended in the prototype stage where I put a little bit of Python together with a lot of help from AI, and it seems to work, and I'm just kind of satisfied and okay, it works, and then I just never do anything with it. But these I kind of come back to because they were actually useful, even in the prototype stage. And I think they're simple enough that we could put them together in a video and it'd be kind of interesting. So let me actually put that for Monday. We're going to, let's see, I want to record the first video of that series and we'll see if it actually is good or if it makes sense. It might be one longish video or it might be a lot of smaller videos where I tackle different parts. I'm not quite sure at this moment in time, but let's just put it in here. And so I get to that on Monday. And let's start with the podcast translation one. I think that one's pretty good. Coding video. All right. And that's going to be it for today. I just wanted to show you that I've been keeping up with the logs, putting all the stuff that I complete from the different days in here, leaving the repeating tasks. Now we've got something to look forward to on Monday. I think it'll be pretty interesting. I've never recorded a coding video before, so it could be a disaster or it could be pretty fun, and it might be interesting. And you might learn a thing or two about vibe coding, even if you have never written a single line of code or asked an AI to write code for you. And I will try to share some of the things that I've learned that sort of seem to work to help you not run into so many issues. So yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.